G'day, I'm Alister Christie from LearnDelphi.tv, and on the line I have Detlef Overbeek. Did I get that correct?
Almost.
Okay.
It's just
okay. So I just, I was wanting to have a discussion with you about publishing and what have you. You're big in the community, particularly with the Blaise Pascal Magazine. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, of course. One of the main things is that I'm a volunteer. So all the work I do is for free. I try to run that magazine as well, publish some books, etc., to deal with the costs, which are quite heavily, and try to bring it out in let's say, quite a number of times during a year, up to 10 times if possible. And I've been working on a project now for 2.5 years of the book. The book is about Lazarus' handbook. It's very, very big, and there are a lot of people involved. I'm not doing only the communication, but also the organization, layouting, stuff like that, correcting things. And I have several people that help me, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be capable of doing it. And about Blaise Pascal Magazine, well, sometimes I write a part of the articles, as if I have people that write articles, I have to see what they have written and test it and things like that. And sometimes you, of course, have writers that are quite capable of doing this for a long time. So then I don't need to test so much. But testing is the main word. If you don't test it, you'll be disappointing people. That's not
potentially, yeah.
So that takes some time.
Yeah. How do people get a hold of the magazine or subscribe?
It's simple. We have a website, www.blaisepascalmagazine.eu, and there you can start subscription. And if you don't have yet one or just want a trial, you can ask for that. You'll get a trial for 3 months. I must say, you are from New Zealand?
That's correct.
Yeah. From Australia, I have quite a lot of people that are subscribed to the magazine.
I have subscribed in the past, but I kind of let it lapse. I probably should get back onto it at some point, because there's a lot of useful stuff in the magazines. But I haven't read one for quite a few years now, so
it might be worthwhile it again.
I think definitely, yeah.
What we usually would advise is that if you're interested, first take what we call the lipstick, which is a library USB stick where all the magazines are on, as well as all the coding from it. And in one turn you have everything we ever published. So that is a very big library itself. It's about 12 gigabytes, so you'll understand that it's
yes, that's quite a lot.
Without Delphi involving in the way that there is no install version of Delphi on it, so it's purely the text itself, and it's not about any programs like Lazarus or Delphi itself. That is beside of that. Download it, of course, but you can get that anywhere.
Yeah, I think if people buy my mega pack of videos from Share It, I think it's about an 8 gigabyte download or something along those lines. It's also quite substantial.
Yeah, especially videos, they're long.
Yeah.
But over here in Holland, we have quite good internet. I have something like 500 megabytes. So that is quite a lot up and down. So you can do quite a lot with it, and I'm very happy with that. I've had that for years now, and I have no complaints about the speed of it.
So is that fiber, or is it some sort of cable?
No, that's fiber.
Yeah. In New Zealand we have a lot of fiber here in New Zealand. A lot of people have fiber to the home, and you can get gigabit type speed. I think you can get 10 gigabit if you know someone, but the broadband adoption here in New Zealand is very high. So it's quite good. I live on a lifestyle block, so I'm sort of a bit limited as to what I can get, but I do get quite good VDSL. So,
yeah. So you have a good connection. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of 100 megabit-ish, sort of 80 or so down and 30 up, which is pretty good.
Okay.
And that's pretty good for living in the country. So.
Yeah, I think in most places of the world, it will be something like that.
Yeah. I mean, Australia hasn't done as well with their broadband, their government. I forget what they called it, but yeah, here in New Zealand it's worked quite well. But yes, digressing from the topic of books. So is the USB stick available as a download, or do you have to?
No. You can, if you order it, you can buy it as it's a kind of credit card where everything is put on. And that looks very nice. And you can use that as well as a normal USB stick. But for certainty, people can download the whole stuff themselves. But it will take quite a long time for most of the people because it's 12 megabytes, so that's quite a lot. But I offer the possibility because it's cheaper and it's faster. So if you ask for the USB credit card, you simply get as well the credit card as the download. So you can do both to be capable starting earlier if you want to. And sometimes I try to help by making pieces available, etc.
Shipping is, because it was still sort of in COVID-19.
Yeah.
And shipping is really expensive. I was looking at buying Holger Flick's book, TMS Web Core, from Amazon, and originally they weren't able to ship it, but now they'll ship it. But actually I think the shipping is about $30-$40 US.
Shipping?
Yeah, because of the COVID-19, the cost of shipping is really high.
Well, Holger about this even before he went to Amazon to do it, because I told him it would be better to have a PDF version as well.
Oh, I agree.
But I do understand for commercial reasons, people are very much afraid of shipping that. But that's not true, because it's just like Microsoft in the early days. You give it away and you'll gain some money, because they tell people if your product is good enough or interesting enough, etc. So I don't care too much about that. I mean, it happens, of course, but, well, you can't change that. If you give people the possibility of having a PDF, that's much quicker, and I advise him to do that, but he can't do it because he is engaged to Amazon or some publishing company that does it. I just bought the book. I did a trick, because if I would let it come from the United States, that would be not possible because they're not shipping it to Europe. So I tried UK, and UK does it. And it's a little bit more expensive, but it was all in all something like 50 euros. So that's quite good, no problem. Well, it is as it is, because I can't change that. It was difficult to find out how to get it over here, because America says only we can't ship that to Europe because we don't do that. You have to find another way. And Holger himself doesn't address that problem, but I will do that in the next magazine because I just found out some people complained to me that they wanted to have that book. I think you're probably aiming at Pas2JS.
Sorry, aiming at?
Pas2JS.
Okay.
Because that was the start of the whole thing. That's many, many, many years ago. But Matthias Gärtner is a German from the Lazarus community. We spoke together and he said he might be able to create something like that, Pascal for JavaScript. And anyway, he succeeded in it. That's the start. And when we did that, I went to Bruno Fierums from TMS Webcall and asked him if he would be able or interested to sell the product or make a product out of it, which is capable of doing Lazarus as well as Delphi. And we had quite long discussions about that because it's not that easy as it looks like. But he has its FMX, he has a special group of components where he's capable of things. And so we agreed to that, and we're working closely together now. And I won't say we have a day-to-day contact, but it's something like that. Because there is always something to mention or to do or new, etc., whatever you want. And by this time, it has become a very, very large suite of possible components you could use. And I'm on my way of creating my own website with Pas2JS. We want to accomplish that you will have a possibility of creating your own store. I'm personally using Molly, and that usually only answers to PHP, but we are going to change that. Matthias is writing the stuff to make it available for Pascal, so you can make a straight coupling with Molly, and you can handle it in Pascal.
Okay, so what's Molly?
The open source, of course.
No, sorry, Detlef. What's Molly?
Molly is a company like, let's say, well, you could look at it like Amazon. It's only far smaller. If you have a website and you want your own shop, you need to have engagement with a company that does the financial contracts for you, credit card stuff, etc. And the problem is that I'm using now WordPress, but WordPress is PHP. And I'm not very good at PHP because I'm not interested in it. I don't trust it in any way. So I want to stay with my Pascal, which I know best. And I think it's ridiculous that as a Pascal man, I have a PHP website. I should have my own written in Pascal. So we're working on it.
Okay, I use Joomla for my website, and that's also PHP based.
Yeah.
But I think you kind of, I suppose, you pick your battles on stuff you want to write yourself and stuff you want to bring in.
Well, the thing is, as a developer, you usually want to be in control of everything, and I found out Joomla as well as WordPress. They are taking over all of whatever you want, and you sometimes come quite close to what you want, but you never are really in control of it. And with the TMS Web Core suite, you are quite capable of doing that. There is another special problem which we tackled now, is the client-server problem. And I make that also available through the magazine, of course. So people will have a full text to see how it is done, etc. And it's actually not that difficult. It's a little bit more difficult nowadays because, well, all the nasty people running around doing viruses and stuff like that, and want to get into your computer, you'll have to stop them. So you'll have to be very careful about your security.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So to an extent, I like to hand that responsibility off to someone else to keep up with sort of all the patching and things like that. But it's quite a challenge to stay abreast of all that information.
Yeah. What I usually do, I first of all, I have some advice for people who want to do it the lazy way and the less expensive way. If you're using on Microsoft, Microsoft has its own virus scanner, and I found out that it is among the very best scanners that there are. Usually having a look at a special antivirus website that each month bring out a report about the best ways to do, the best results, etc. And I think because it's built into Microsoft, it doesn't cost anything. It is maybe not as luxury as some other stuff is, but this is quite good. It's easy to handle, also for people that are all lazy or are not interested in this.
Yeah. Windows Defender is quite capable.
Yeah. You had some experience with it?
I've often installed AVG on
I stopped that.
Quite a few machines.
Yeah.
And
AVG was a very good one in the earlier days, but here in Holland they became a very aggressive sort of sales figure, and I wasn't really, let's say, the results were not good enough for me to go on with it, so I stopped that and went over to Microsoft. After speaking to quite some people that are really becoming nervous about viruses, etc., like Matthias and Michael, etc., they work with scanners. They absolutely don't want anything to happen. That's like me. And besides that, I might say that one very good thing to do is make your own images of your hard disk each week as far as possible, because whenever something happened, I had some years ago I had some trouble with blackmail stuff, and I simply stopped it, put in another hard disk. It threw me back 3 days, but I didn't lose any money in that way, and I was absolutely sure there is no rubbish on it.
So I think doing backups, you really need to have an offline copy, because a lot of the malware these days just infects everything, all your social media accounts, and if you've got Dropbox or anything like that, it goes through and also encrypts all that stuff. Actually,
as well. I refused Dropbox because I was afraid about it. I have a very special thought. Many people won't agree with me, of course, but one of the things I don't do is using the cloud. I don't trust the cloud. it's not only because I don't trust it, it's actually, in my view, it is networking just the old way with a modern marketing term, and that's all. I mean, working in the cloud means for nobody anything, and all you need to know about that, you're making contact with something elsewhere, and you're never sure you're in control, because we've seen quite some things going wrong the last time. So I advise people, if they really want to do that, make your own cloud with your own server and stuff like that. That would be okay, but not trusting on the bigger firms, etc. And I mean, Dropbox, the idea is quite good. I love it, actually, but I don't use it because I distrust it. And it's proven to give quite a lot of problems. Not only Dropbox, of course, all of these kind of...
Yeah. I use Google quite a bit, particularly the Google Photos and stuff like that. Of course, at Gmail, I've got 3 Gmail accounts. And yeah, I find I quite enjoy them being in the cloud. I don't have to do any configuration on my end or maintenance, which is quite handy. But yeah, so this Lazarus book, the Lazarus Handbook you're working on, I noticed it's over 1,000 pages. And you said you've been working on it for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's quite a substantial time to be working on a book.
I'll tell you how it works. First of all, you have the authors. Within time, authors stop because they see what huge task it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is you go through many phases. Let's say you write your article for the book, and then it will be reviewed technically. Once that is done, it goes to the first corrector. The first corrector takes out all problems, of course. Then it comes to me. I put a layout on it for trying. And after that, you'll go again to the corrector. The corrector says okay. Then it goes back to the author. The author says okay. Then it comes again to me. And then the second corrector comes. We have correctors at several levels. There are correctors that have a look at, let's say, the technical view, but we have also correctors that are looking at commas, at spaces and stuff like that, which is, well, quite something. And because of this, because it's a working together with many, many people, and the biggest part of, or 50% of all the revenues of the book are going backwards to the community to make development possible. So it is in 2 ways important to have a very good book, because of the developers, of course, and because of future documentation. It must be good enough for quite some time, because if you write a book, you don't want to do it every year again.
Right.
And what we chose for is, when you buy a printed book, you get the PDF file as well. And you can take a subscription on the PDF file, because every year it will be updated, because programming is, of course, an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
So it will change and change and change, and we'll update it as much as possible. And then every 5 or 10 years, we will try to bring out a new book. And that seems to be quite successful.
Okay. So when do you think it'll be published?
Well, I'm working on it very hard. I think it might be end of the next week. Anyway, it's short now, because we have done 99% of all the articles that need to be in it. We're trying to be very careful about taking out stuff. What we need to do is the indexing for the book. That's very troublesome because if you do a simple index, it will be very, very large, and it will be hard to use it. So you'll have to create a index which is in itself costs a few days only to create the index, because you can automate it, but you have to say what you want or not want. And there is quite a list of things in the book that are interesting for people, but not all things are to be searched for. And the other stuff is that if you use the PDF file itself, there is a built-in index which I create, and that built-in index makes it possible to search very quick, and then you get some results and you can just jump to the page where you want to be. So there are quite a number of possibilities of using the book. And I think the PDF file itself is a necessary extra to the book, because if you have the printed version, that's easy for reading. But I think for searching and getting where you want, you need to have an index. So it must be electronic. I've even been thinking, but it's not yet technically possible, of making an internet version of the book, so you can take a subscription to have a look into it, etc. But because it's so big, I have to create very special circumstances, and I don't think it'll be without very big technical solutions. It won't be simply possible to create anything that you are capable of using in a normal time, because when it's so big, you first have to download it. And even on the internet, that will take quite a while. So we have to work on that. But that's for the future. We might do that. Now, one of my ideas is, I'm not yet sure if I can manage that, is that I want to do the same sort of thing for Delphi. Actually, what we did with the Lazarus book is such an in-depth book that it covers anything of Lazarus, FPC, let's say it like that. For Delphi, there isn't a book that really does this. And I think that is of great interest, especially for beginners, because we're giving quite some insight in how things really work, where you can find them and what it means, etc., which is for a beginner very difficult to understand sometimes. There are terms that they've never heard of. So if you haven't heard of, you can't use it.
I think doing a comprehensive Delphi book these days, I was talking with Marco and Primoj regarding it. Certainly Nick Hodges had it, but basically they'll be thousands of pages long. I mean,
it will be the same size.
Probably like 3,000 pages, just because there's now so much in Delphi. I mean, if you look at like RAD server and all that kind of extra stuff that is quite substantial.
The VCL, just the knowledge. I think you once you would do anything like that, you'd have to do 3 parts, books separated into their own special item that they might copy.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people writing Delphi books at the moment, which is quite positive to see. Quite a few published. And they're quite specific topics, like such as memory management and performance, design patterns, and even even Nick Hodges' books, Coding in Delphi, More Coding in Delphi, and Dependency Injection are all, the very various aspects of Delphi programming.
Yeah, that's for the bigger part. I think that would be very interesting. I've been doing something about architecture on Pascal here in Amsterdam at the, we call it Free University and Vrije Universiteit from Amsterdam.
Okay.
I studied that for about 2 years. I learned an immense amount of things I never even dreamed of, etc. Having the helicopter view is one of the first things you learn there. You learn patterns, you learn what it is to make designs, etc., to inject new patterns and things like that. But that's quite a heavy stuff. I think you have to make a study out of that before you can, or not before you can. Once you are studying IT, I think that might be a choice of doing so. But this is, of course, for very large systems like banking and stuff like that. And maybe in future for larger stuff. What I think it's very interesting to say about this is that even though you would take only a very brief look at designing, it will give you far better insight into how to program than you ever have thought of. And I would like to do that for the book as well. One of the things making a book is that you simply can't do it yourself. So you'll have to have many people working together. What does it mean? That means that you are writing an article, somebody else is writing an article, etc. And that must be brought into one sort of understanding. And we have, for the Lazarus book, we have a native speaker, which is Howard, and Howard is doing especially the language part. So each author is actually rewritten without technically being rewritten, but to make sure that the book itself has one sort of approach. And
consistency, yeah, and one voice kind of thing.
You need that, because otherwise it's just a collection of several things, and it should be more than that. If you undertake anything like this, I remember that we did it for the first time with Lazarus. It takes you at least 5 years to do the preparation and come to an end result, because you have to negotiate with people, make them understand, and some people will stop in the time that, etc., in the meantime. So it's quite difficult, but it's very, very necessary to do so. So I think we should do so. I want to find people, authors that are good enough, as well as would try to work together in this book. Now, I'm using a very special sort of contract for this. We don't do it the American way. We don't do contracts at all. We do trust. And trust means it's simple. If we sell the book, we have 2 parts, which is 50% of the part is for the author, which can be several authors, and 50% is for creating the book and for designing and stuff and whatever you need. It's for the company. So that means that, and that is why I do that, authors will get much more money than they usually get by the book. I do recall that were quite some writers that wrote quite a large book and then finally had just a very little sum of money for the book, simply because they had signed the contract. And I don't think that's fair, because if I can make a book and the author is doing the work, we should share. That's how I do it.
And I think the whole self-publishing industry has now made authors get a much larger cut of the sale of the book. So, for instance, if you go to leanpub.com, the author gets 80%. They just do it electronic, so it's PDF, EPUB, and MOBI formats, what they distribute. And you can either write the book, like do it in Word or something like that, and generate those files and upload them, or you can write in their Markdown language, which then automatically gets converted into those formats. Or you could do the sort of Kindle direct publishing, which if your book is priced between $3 and $10, you get 70% of the revenues, less 15 cents per megabyte that you're the size of the book. But if you're outside those ranges, you only get 35% of the revenue. And I haven't yet investigated the Kindle publishing physical books, which is something I need to do. So my intention is for my book that is pretty much it's finished at the moment. This is people editing it and just to spot any mistakes and things like that. But I'll probably go with LeanPub and generate my own file formats. So I've just been experimenting with EPUB and MOBI formats for sort of electronic readers, the Kindles and things like that. And it's a bit of a pretty difficult in that, I mean, if the book was just text, it would not be a problem if it's like a novel. But there's a lot of formatting involved, lots of source code, so there's all syntax highlighting and it's all in monospaced font and stuff like that. And yeah, getting all that to work correctly. EPUB seems to be okay, but I'm having a lot of difficulty with MOBI, which is the format that Kindle supports.
Yeah.
So that's proving to be a bit challenging, but I'm getting closer. So.
Well, the thing is, I yet haven't found any EPUB possibility that does good enough representation of images and things like that. And even making up the coding pieces is quite difficult for them. I can understand why they're not yet that good. If you do PDF, that works quite well, but all the other stuff, I've tried it once and over again, but that always gives quite a lot of trouble. And there is another thing about it, which is not always necessary, but what I like to bring in is color, because color makes it very often lighter to read and to see how things are organized, etc. Not necessary, but it can help. Of course, that makes a book very much more expensive, especially when you're going to print it. If you can do it by only, let's say, PDF or EPUB or something like that, that would be good enough. The only thing is that you won't have the quite large community of people that really want to have something in their hand. They want to have a book.
Yes. I'll definitely have a book. The intention is to do the electronic versions first, because they'll be easier, and then do the print version. Because with the electronic version, I don't need to worry about the layout quite as much. But once printed, you have to make sure page numbers and chapters and all that kind of stuff work correctly, and you don't have any orphaned lines.
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
which is all irrelevant for both EPUB and Moby.
Yeah, I do understand. What are you writing about?
So my book is Code Faster in Delphi. Well, this is the first one. There's going to be two, and so it's all about being productive in the Delphi IDE. So I go through the keyboard shortcuts and all the various tools and what have you that's available in the IDE, and then some programming practices, some stuff in the RTL like regular expressions. Not a lot of people know how to use regular expressions, and they're so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And that, you can just write a one-line regular expression that might take you 20 or 30 lines of Delphi code. So to do equivalently.
Well, there must be somebody that explains it. So if you can help, that would be a great thing.
So yeah, I'm hoping it'll be well received. It's short, so it's currently about 140 A4 pages, but that'll expand out a bit because it's currently one continuous document. I haven't done any paging.
Yes, I understand. You're adding up to it, etc., and it becomes more expanding as you.
Yeah, so it probably end up about once formatted. It's for a print book. It's probably about 200 pages, so it's not a huge book.
Yeah.
But it should be very, very specific in its focus.
I would be very interested in publishing some about it, because I do believe regular expressions, there aren't many people that can work with it, and they don't know how to start it, etc., and what the revenues will be. So that would be a very good idea, I think. Do you provide some lessons for it as well?
There's some. So the code examples in the book are based around IP addresses. So basically, it's matching an IP address and then finding all the IP addresses in some text, and then pulling out those IP addresses and then doing a replacement. So basically redacting the IP addresses in a piece of text. And so there's the various aspects of the. I mean, it's just one of the things. I mean, I do. I also cover some language features such as generics.
Yeah. And
some generic collections stuff. And most of it's sort of introductory stuff with where to go to find out more. Because, you could write an entire book on generics if you're so inclined. I mean, I've got a video course, which is 5 hours long or something, I can't remember, just on the generic collections library. So it's the...
long.
So I wanted the book to be short. And also cover a lot of third-party plugins such as GExperts and Model Maker Code Explorer, CN Wizards, which there's some just marvelous tools in those. And I'll just pick a few of the tools out of each of those and explain them. So,
yeah. What I was thinking of, I'm always thinking of what is going to be the future of Pascal, etc. One thing came to my mind, which is on the internet there has Tiobe. Tiobe is doing statistics about the best products, etc. And
yes.
I found out Delphi is completely out of it. It's somewhere in the 56 range or something.
It varies a lot. It's been, I think, as low as 12.
Yeah,
but just the way they calculate it is really weird.
Yes, that's what I mean. I thought it was a very trustworthy sort of article, but it isn't, because sometimes it's number 10, then it's 12, suddenly it's 56. And I don't think that is very good for the community. Now, one of my main things is how to make Pascal far more interesting, especially for beginners, because those are the people we need. And I'm still thinking about how to do that. I want to create something for that. and especially make that available to several groups of age. I mean, there is an age of 8 to 12 where you can do something with programming, and once you're 12, you will be capable of thinking a bit more abstract, etc. So I think for all these level of ages, we should develop programs that show in a very easy way how people could use it. What we're working on, and I'm working together with Michael van Kanijt, is something I want to have in future. I want that to be in Delphi as well, so I'll talk to Jim, if possible, about creating lessons in this way. Probably you know what I mean. If you have a screen, you usually have the coding on one page. Then there is the result, the complete executive running on another page. And you can see if you change the result, if it would be something like a design, let's say it like that. And you especially could do that with web programs. You could show if you move an object on that page, the result page, how the coder changes. And vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could try to make, especially for younger people, something like, let's say, a very small object that looks like a car, and you can push it, and you'll see on the other side how the coder changes. Now you can correct the code as a child and see what your car does, or the other way around. That's what I mean with the lesson. What I especially thought of is something like, and we have started it already, Isaac Newton saw the apple fall, and that is quite a nice thing to make visible how the if then else is going to work. And you could write a little story, make that available as a complete project. And if you change details on that project, the apple won't fall anymore, or it won't fall but rise up. Things like that. And I think that would be very funny for people, especially smaller children that can do their own thing with it. That's what I want, because I think in the future we'll need an enormous amount of people that are capable of at least doing some kind of development. I mean, because you need to switch a button to put on the light, you do not have to know everything about electricity, but you need to have some understanding of that, and that will become more and more a problem for the future. So we need to do about it.
Yeah, certainly. I think the number of developers needs to double, or has doubled every 7 years or so, I think, since the 1940s, back when there was one, Alan Turing possibly, or further back, I suppose Ada Lovelace or something like that. But and it also means that in the industry, because it's doubling every 7 years, the average experience is actually, for a developer, is not that significant. It's for half of them it's between 1 and 7 years, because they've had to come in the last 7 years. So the speed at which new developers need to be educated, and educated well, is a very serious challenge for society in general, because everything runs on code these days.
Well, about that, I can say something like what I find very interesting. I usually write some articles about things that are sideways related to development. The last thing in number 86 I wrote is about brain translations, which means there are a few women that have electrical insults. They had some brain surgery, and what they try to do is to work with these women to let them express simple thoughts and then handle these signals in a way through artificial intelligence. And they did something about that, and they finally succeeded in about 250 words that are recognized in that way. So people can, without saying anything, simply from their brain send text to whatever, maybe even to Bluetooth, and then you can translate it. I mean, that's not a very big article in itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you heard of a book called, I think it's Thing Explainer, written by the guy who does the SKCD cartoons? Okay, so he wrote a book which describes all sorts of technological things like the space shuttle and what have you, but only used the 1,000 most common words. In fact, it had to be the 1,000 most common words because 1,000 is not in the 1,000 most common words. The word 1,000. So it's so he uses 1,000 words to explain all these modern things, and it actually does quite a reasonable job of doing it. So even with a small vocabulary, you can explain some quite sophisticated things. So yeah, I mean, 250 words is a lot less than 1,000, but it might, yeah. And I suppose you can.
It's a start.
And you can combine words together to have other meanings and stuff as well, presumably. But
it's especially interesting because now people that have, let's say, some kind of brain damage still would be capable of expressing or making to us available that they still are there. They are not capable of expressing it, but in this way, they could show that they want something or they need something or whatever.
Yeah, indeed. I know Elon Musk is working on.
Yes, I know that.
The brain implants and stuff. So.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say, I tried to mix up the magazine with some of these articles because sometimes it's very interesting. Sometimes it's even getting very close to what can become some sort of code. In this case, if you would be able to collect that text and make, let's say, a simple text out of it, dot text item, you could send that to Bluetooth, and because of Google Chrome is capable of sending Bluetooth signals over the internet, that would be fabulous to work with. And what I did ask to Michael is please write. No, it wasn't. It was Matthias Gertner, and he wrote an API call, especially to make contact with the Bluetooth connection. And so if you have text, you could simply send the text to something else. You could even let that be spoken by Google itself, and things like that. So it comes very close to what we can use. So those are things I think are very interesting. Something else which I sometimes do in the magazine is I've been speaking about 2 years ago about quantum theory, trying to explain something about it, and then explain what a quantum computer might become and where they stand now, at least 2 years ago. So I went to the internet and found out that there is a German lady working at a Dutch university, and she is doing the quantum internet. And she promised this year, I don't think that'll go on this year, but this year she said that there should be sent signals, quantum particles at least, through the internet by about 5 different places in Holland. And they had already succeeded by 2 of them and are on their way to develop that. I think we are on the start of this quantum internet, just like we had the ARPANET quite some time ago. And I think that's very interesting. Just to make people enthusiastic about it and maybe to find out, do I understand all the possibilities about what actually is string theory, etc., and stuff like that. Not to go too deep into it because I'm not that good enough, but I can explain some things, and there are many examples, and I think this is going to be very interesting for the future of technical stuff like your notebook and things like that. It will come closer to us. I think between 10 and 20 years from now, we might have some thing that is really as quick as a quantum computer.
But yeah, quantum computers are quite strange.
Yeah.
And they run statistically, so you run the inputs many times to get what you think the output might be.
Yeah, 97% or so.
So yeah, whatever standard deviation you want to reach for how accurate you want or how certain you want to be about the answer.
Yeah.
And even a very simple quantum computer can achieve quite ridiculous feats of calculation compared to your sort of desktop at home, because of the way it solves problems. It's solves every permutation at once, and you end up with a result. So yeah, it's and I haven't really researched it enough to know how you go about writing programs for it or anything like that. So, but it could be interesting to get into that.
Well, the main thing is actually that, like you said, because you're doing things, let's say, like 1,000 questions at once, you're much quicker than your notebook. Otherwise, it won't be any quicker at all. But there is also a next possibility, which I've been following for some years, that is chips that work on light emission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming close. They're still very expensive, but if those machines are available, and that will be absolutely possible within the next 5 years, I think we'll have notebooks that are so fast you won't need anything else. This is so good that you instantaneously could do whatever you want. And
yeah. I have to say, the notebook that I'm using is about 7 years old, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm overdue for a new one, but it's actually, it runs quite well. I've kind of upgraded it to its maximum capacity with memory-wise and SSD and all that kind of thing. But
I understand. I have something the same on my Windows machine. I have a very large machine and large screen, etc., because of layouting. But this Mac I just bought, it's very new. It's the latest version. I had to do that because I need to test some new programs, and on the old one I couldn't update to the latest version of the Apple. I don't know what it's called, but anyway. So I did that, and I must say Apple is absolutely amazingly fast, even with Windows. It's often even better than a Windows machine itself. That's funny, I think.
Yeah, you pay a lot for a MacBook though.
Yeah, it costs quite a lot of money, something like 2,400 euros before you have a good one. And I think that's quite expensive, yes.
Yeah, you can get quite a nice Windows laptop for that as well, but matter of finding one. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
this was a matter of needing to have one, and because I can put also Windows on it, which I've done, I'll have the best of two. That means I have an Apple, and I have also my Windows available. And that works quite good. Sometimes it doesn't, as you saw this morning.
Yeah. Well, this evening for me, but yes.
Yeah, this evening. Yeah.
Yeah. What tools are you using for writing your Lazarus handbook? So what are you writing it in?
Quite a lot. To create images, usually I use Corel Draw.
Okay. I think the last version of Corel Draw I used was version 7. That would have been late 90s. So.
It's about 13 new numbers ago.
Yeah.
We now have 2020, but all in all, it will not have changed that much. Now, the other thing is what I use is LibreOffice.
Yep.
And something else I'm using is because I want the authors to give me articles that are not layouted. I use, just a moment, I need to look up, what's it called? Tipora.
Tipora?
Yeah? Ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Tipora is a language, an HTML language, where you can produce your products for the website, and from there on go to whatever else you want. You can make PDF out of it or a document, etc. One of the beautiful things about it is that if you have quite a number of illustrations in it, it will still be stable. LibreOffice is not too good at having quite a lot of figures in it,
Okay.
Illustrations. And Word, it's about the same sort of thing. And Tipora is as well usable for the net, as you can take out the text, paste it into any document you want, or even convert it. And that's a very nice program. What then I use, let me see. This is a program which is free, TNT. It is called, and you can make screen dumps with it, design on it, etc., which comes very handy because sometimes you want to make a very close look at something, and the other, well, you need to be able to use it in several ways. And then what else do I use? For videoing, I use, I'm not sure whether I can help. If I have it on this machine, I don't think so. Oh yeah, Camtasia.
Yes, yeah.
Camtasia.
I use that for all my screen recordings.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll edit this video in Camtasia as well. It does quite a good job of.
Is a very good thing to make video recordings as well as composing things. making lessons, etc. I love that program. It takes some time before you understand how it works. But if you do understand what a timeline is, that's quite good to handle. And it's not difficult.
It's fairly standard in the way it handles, the video, as you say, video timeline. So if you're familiar with another, Adobe or type application, you pick up Camtasia pretty quick.
Yeah, it's very simple. Well, I have some special effects sometimes that I need and do, but I'm not sure. No, I don't use that too often. I mean, these are the main products I use for this. And of course, I use Delphi and Lazarus, Pascal. And because we're working on different platforms, I'm using as well Linux, DOS as or Windows as Mac. And of course, I have a tablet from Samsung. I have an iPhone as well as a, what's it called? Android phone. Just for testing and stuff like that. So usually my stuff becomes very old because I can't always pay for the new stuff. That's too expensive.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's pretty hard to keep up. I don't really bother. And generally a phone is pretty good for several years these days. I mean, it used to be that you have to get a new one every year, but now, if you have a flagship phone from 3 years ago, it's probably still quite reasonable.
Not only that, there's hardly anything new on it, so you don't really need it.
Yeah, when they're getting faster, they're getting the cameras on them are just getting insanely good.
Yeah, the chips are far better. That can help. That really can help.
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably call an end. We've been talking for an hour and a quarter, so
okay,
that's pretty good going. Is there anything else you want to say? Sorry.
What are you going to do? You cut it into pieces, etc. And
I'll just do as little editing as possible and throw it up on YouTube, and people can, watch it if they like, and if they, don't find it interesting, they can just ignore it.
Okay.
But I'll do a little bit of editing on it.
Like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe not. I mean, video editing is quite time consuming, I find.
It is. If you want to be good at it, it takes quite a lot of time. But you can make it easy on yourself. And my experience is that you can make people interested in a video that takes about 1 minute to show some subjects. And if they want to know more, then they can go to the whole version. That's better accepted.
Okay. All right. Well, let's stop there. I'll end the recording. So thank you.